When I was a kid and as a teenager, I was involved with amateur radio. And I built radios and transmitters. And the simplest radio you can build, you see right here. It's just a piece of wire, 4 or 5 components, and it doesn't even need a battery to work. And for 1 weekend a year, I would come to this city, Zwolle, and join the local scouting group for what was called Jamboree on the Air. And together with scouts, we would use our radios and transmitters to connect scouting groups across the world and have them talk to each other. And that was always extremely exciting, connecting all these individuals worldwide and sensing that global network. Now, in school and in other places, people usually told me that everything needed its own place. But to me, everything was somehow magically connected, if only I had the tools and the ability to do it and see it. And then, of course, internet happened and digitalization. And all of a sudden, we were all connected on an unprecedented scale. And we all had access to tools as individuals that were not available to us before. So in my professional work, I kept working on it. What happens if you connect people that were previously unconnected and you push tools into their hands that they didn't have access to before? And today, I want to talk to you about one of those new tools that are now available to us as individuals, and it's called open data. And I'd like to talk about 3 things. 1, what open data is and how it's being used. Second, why our societies need open data. And thirdly, why you all should get involved with open data. Now, open data is a very versatile thing. Already it's being used in thousands of different prototypes and for different purposes and different applications. So let me start with giving you a few examples. This is a website called Who's Its Web in Denmark. And you go there and you give it your address and you answer about a dozen other questions. And then within 20 minutes, you get a full advice on how you can make your home more energy efficient. And it adds a list of financing options that are available to you, like subsidies, etc. And it also provides you with a list of builders that are qualified to do the work on your home to make it more energy efficient. And the reason this website can do all that is because it taps into 6 or 7 different open data sources. It has access to data that the government has, like building plans, like plans for renewable energy in your region, and it combines all that with your personal contacts and specific information and turns that into advice. At the same time, in Kenya, open data is being used to create applications like these. This is a mobile application to provide better access to healthcare in Kenya. It helps you with diagnosing symptoms, and it shows you whether the doctor you are seeing is actually a licensed doctor or not. And it also provides you with the way to the nearest healthcare facility in your neighborhood. In Slovenia, they have one big frustration, and that is pollution of the countryside by illegal waste. In the hills and in the forest and in the fields, there's a tremendous amount of illegal waste being dumped. With open data, citizens put together this map that shows you all the spots of illegal dumping in the country. It's a complete map. And the map is then being used by groups of citizens to coordinate their actions and clean up that waste. And their aim is, to, as they say, to make Slovenia the cleanest country in Europe. Now, those are just 3 examples of how open data is already being used out of thousands and thousands of prototypes. So what is this open data that can do all that? Well, open data is data that was collected for one task, usually by governments or other big organizations, and then published for everyone else to also make use of, for their purposes and their goals. So open data is public data that is being published without any technical, legal, or financial barriers. And what happens when you remove barriers is that all kinds of new things can emerge. Removing barriers opens up the low end of existing markets, and it opens up new areas of activity. And that's great, because those are the places where innovation happens, where new things come along from unexpected places and from unexpected people. And that creates impact, that creates potential. And we've already seen in various areas that that impact is being created by open data. It's showing socioeconomic impact. In fact, that socioeconomic impact is the primary reason why the European Commission is promoting open data with laws and regulations, because they calculated that there's a potential of over 140 billion euros, or 2% of GDP in Europe per year, if every public data set that the government has that could be published would be open for all of us to use. So, because of that potential that the European Union as a whole sees, governments across Europe have started opening up data. From the first data portal launched by the UK government in the fall of 2009 until last month when Germany opened their national data portal, over 100 local, regional and national governments have created portals where you can go and find data that you can reuse. And one of them is the Dutch national data portal, and they, in their plans called Open Data Next, they explicitly state that they want to use open data to address societal issues. They want to use it to improve life in disadvantaged neighborhoods inside cities. And they want to use open data to enable people to battle the consequences of regional shrinking, where people are moving away from the countryside and into the cities. So in short, there's an untapped abundance of data lying inside government bodies and inside large organizations, that if it were opened up to all of us, it holds a huge potential for things that we could do with it, applications that we could build. And already it is being opened up, but we're slowly moving, and that will take some time, to a situation that everything that can be made public by governments and by large organizations will be made public in a way that we can use it. Now, that abundance, that promise of abundance is obviously very great, but I think there's a more compelling reason why we need open data in our societies. And that's because we by now live in a very networked society, a global network society. And networks only thrive if you share things and if you open up. This is a picture of my personal network, and I'm in the middle. If I don't share, and if I'm not open to all the others in the network, I basically am not a part of the network. People will not see me. If I don't share, I don't interact, and I'm not connected to the rest of the world. So it's no coincidence that you're not just hearing about open data as today, but also about open design and open hardware, open knowledge, open access, open source. Because open everything, is a necessary feature of a working networked society. So in open data, it's not the data that is important, even though that's the stuff that you eventually use to create your applications. It's the open that is important. The fact that all of a sudden, all of us in that network society have access to that and can use it. So open is the more important word here. The second reason why our society needs open data is that because of that network society, there's now so many more connections and feedback loops that we've created that the level of complexity has increased enormously in our society. Together, we form one big, giant, connected anthill where everything is connected with everything else. And without new tools like open data, we as individuals have no real perception of that complexity of the world, and we have no real way of addressing that complexity of the world. If you're like an ant where you only have your own existence and you're not really aware of how your actions contribute to the complexity of the surrounding anthill, the surrounding world, you can't really battle the problems that come with that complexity. For instance, if you look at cities, open data is a possibility to get a new level of understanding, a new perception of the city around you. This is how we mostly experience cities. This is Amsterdam. You walk around and you see things and you take pictures. But this is a single individual perspective, the perspective of one single ant, because we have no clue, if you walk around like this, what the city as a whole is doing and how it's functioning. This is also Amsterdam. This is an overview of where people in Amsterdam take pictures. The red dots are photos taken by tourists, and the blue dots are photos taken by inhabitants of Amsterdam. And all of a sudden, a completely new image appears, because all of a sudden you see there are other things worthwhile photographing in the city outside of the touristy spots. All of a sudden you start to see the shape of the anthill emerge from that data. So Hans Rosling, in his original talk at TED, a few years ago, he was right. He said, we need to experience and be able to see the complexity of the data that describes our world to be able to solve real issues. But that data needs to be available to all of us. It needs to be available to you and to me as open data. Because that way, we can perceive the anthill as it really is, and not just have that single ant's perspective. The trick is that every single ant needs to know how the anthill works. And that brings us to why you need to be involved with open data. Every single ant needs to know how the anthill works. And that's already sort of happening, because across the world, across Europe, groups of people are meeting up, like here in Bologna last month, where over 150 Italians came together to look at data sets that were being published by the Italian government and see what they could do with it and whether they could use it to address issues in their own lives. And they're not the typical people who work with data in their professional lives. These are all basically data amateurs, so to speak. But they come together to learn about this and to find out ways of using data to address their own issues. And it's not just in Italy. Just 3 weeks ago, we had International Open Data Day, where in 100 cities around the world, groups like these came together and worked on finding data, cleaning it up, turning it into applications. And I happened to be in Warsaw that day, so I joined the session there, and together with over 50 Polish people, we explored open data. And we built applications. One was called Polytwoops. It's a clone of an existing Dutch application. And in Polytwoops, you track the deleted Twitter messages from politicians, all the stuff that they wish they hadn't said, and retract it. And we built more boring, but probably more interesting applications about our restrictions in Polish airspace and providing that information to amateur pilots. And there's loads of those type of things where you could use open data, if you learn the skills, to solve issues that you face. If you're interested in food safety and in hygiene of restaurants, and I hear that the best restaurant in Copenhagen recently had a couple of issues on that area, then you might be interested in using open data to build applications like these that shows you the inspection reports from the restaurant that you are about to go and have dinner at. Or, if you've ever been frustrated like me to find an affordable parking space in Amsterdam within walking distance of where you need to be, then an app like this, using open data to find that parking spot and see whether it's available or not, might be a good idea to build. Or if you're in a wheelchair and you have no idea whether public buildings and public venues will be accessible for you, open data will help you build applications like these, like WheelMap, where you can find out whether public places are accessible to you. Or more on a global scale, if you've ever wondered how corporations are connected to each other, how they own different pieces in other companies that then own them back, and all these different constructions that you see in the newspapers about, then this project might be something, Open Corporates. It aims to collect open data on every single company in the world, about who controls it, who owns it, and all the different connections between them. If you are interested in this type of thing, then open data might be a good source. Or, if you're interested in government spending, open spending might be something to join. Because here, people try to track every single euro spent by every single government body in the world. Obviously, they're not quite there yet, but the aim is there. What you see in all these cases is that somebody had an issue, somebody had an itch to scratch, somebody had a problem, and they got their hands on the data, and then found new ways that they didn't have access before to address their issues and create solutions towards solving their own problems. So this is your basic recipe. And that's basically what we all should do. Think of what are the things in your environment, in your daily life, that you want to address. And is there then any data available that could help you do it? But that requires some skills, like I just said. And luckily, you don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to start learning to program. You don't have to start learning to do statistics, which was so boring when you were back in school. You don't have to start learning to build mobile applications, because there's already a bunch of tools out there that can help you get started. So there's really no excuse to not start using open data, and really no excuse to not start doing it. So that's the summary. Don't become an ant, but learn to understand how the anthill works. Get involved, use open data so you understand your world. Thank you very much.